All right, everybody. Welcome to the SABER XchangeCore webinar for this month. Those of you who are not familiar with the GoToMeeting tool, if you raise your hand in the little attendee box there, I will know that you have a question of some sort, and I'll try to pay attention to that. You can also enter any questions into the chat. Other than that, you are all automatically muted. And welcome, everyone. This is going to be a very interesting session that allows us to probe SABER as a organization powered by XchangeCore to support business operations status information to governments. And we're pleased this year, as we announced the Hurricane Information Initiative, to have Craig Fugate chairing this initiative to fill that information gap between the public sector and the private sector. Our topics for today are going to be looking at hurricanes, the whole community, and the value of SABER in Craig's introduction. Then we'll take a pretty detailed look at how SABER works for you, some examples of SABER in action. And then we started this hurricane initiative a couple of years ago. Remember David Griffith, who was the FEMA head of the Hurricane Preparedness Program, who inspired a lot of the thought on information sharing. And then we're going to finish with a call to action for all of you. So let me start with Craig. And Craig served, for those of you who don't know, as President Obama's FEMA Administrator from really almost the beginning of the administration through 2017. For the prior 8 years, he was Governor Jeb Bush's Florida Emergency Management Director. And just a couple of the statistics that I saw are pretty amazing. There were more than 500 presidentially declared major disasters and emergencies during those 8 years, which is a pretty big task. One of the things that I found most interesting with Craig, he and I go back quite a few years, as acquaintances, was some of my early work actually during President Carter's reorganization project to create FEMA. I led a little tiny study group on red tape and disasters. And one of the things as a state emergency manager and local emergency manager that Craig took on when he took over FEMA was red tape, policies, procedures, all of which produced paper. And his administration led to reducing policies that helped to streamline and eliminate paperwork, reduce those policies from more than 2,000 to fewer than 200. So it took 30-some years since the creation of FEMA, but that push towards paperwork reduction was really a great accomplishment during that period. I bring that out because FEMA and Craig's experience is more than emergency response. On the preparedness side, big numbers again, $19 billion in preparedness grants that were awarded by FEMA during those 8 years. 700 drills and exercises in 47 states. Just some major participation all up and down the emergency management community. 40 million participants as part of the community preparedness drills all got involved during that period of time. But even FEMA from the early days, but reinforced through Craig's tenure, pushed back from just preparedness and response to the mitigation activity. And this is a real passion for Craig, coming from Florida, who hopes to avoid having beachfront property in Gainesville, which is about 100 miles or so from the beach, perhaps. And the mitigation activity is absolutely essential. $7 billion during his tenure as FEMA Director in hazard mitigation assistance, and a real emphasis on building codes. Forcing those mitigation or those preparedness and recovery grants to include requirements to rebuild to hazard resistance code and standard. Really an important part of putting some muscle into the recommendation that people have good building standards. That actually led, in part, and through the impassioned promotion of that, to disaster-resistant building codes across the country, increasing from 40% of the jurisdictions in 2009 up to 63% in 2016, enacting some form of disaster-resistant building codes. And all of that suggests the range of activities that really reflected what Craig arrived in FEMA calling the whole community approach, in which individuals should be self-reliant. Disaster preparedness at the local level should involve public and private sector, and all the way up to the federal government with national footprint organizations should be operating as a team. So with that as introduction, let me ask Craig to talk a little bit about our topic today, where he's come from, and in particular, what he sees for SABER as the opportunities in the future. So Craig, welcome.
All right, thanks, Jim, everybody. I'm currently at the National Hurricane Conference in New Orleans, and a lot of discussions about the private sector. But I want to tell a story. When Governor Bush tells a story, he tells it much funnier because it's at my expense. But in the remnants of after Katrina, we got hit with a fairly sizable storm called Hurricane Wilma. And Hurricane Wilma knocked out more power in Florida than got knocked out in all the states from Katrina. Didn't cause the loss of life and didn't certainly cause the level of devastation. But it produced a very large area without power. And based upon our experiences in the 2004 hurricane season, we'd gotten pretty good at shipping food, water, and ice down to areas of impact, to the point where we were hearing from some of our retail folks that we'd actually dropped the value of ice and water to almost zero, that anything they had pre-stocked literally had no value because we were giving out so much free. And that's pretty much typical what I call government-centric problem solving. Our assumption was when the power was out, retail was so severely affected that we'd have to make up the difference, but we never really talked to retail. And the situation we didn't really pay attention to was as much as we were learning about responding, so was the retail sector, to the point where by the time Wilma rolls around, not having a power was no longer necessarily an indicator that stores weren't open. And he likes to tell this story about how about 3 days into Wilma down in Miami, he's talking to some people that are in line to get free food, water, and ice from Florida's National Guard, who was handing them out at one of our points of distribution that happened to be geographically located in a central location, easy for people to get to, good egress, and a large parking lot. Just so happened it was in the parking lot of a major grocery chain in the state of Florida. And he observed as he was talking to people in line that not only were they getting the free food, water, and ice from the National Guard, they had groceries from that grocery store, and oh, by the way, they were eating fast food from the local fast food restaurant that was open. Now, this area had no power. But what we did not understand was that the private sector was no longer waiting for the power to come back on. Particularly in Florida, they were getting generators in, getting their staff in, and if necessary, they were actually setting up in their parking lots to start retailing. And Governor Bush likes to tell that story because he says, you know, it's kind of ironic. Here we are handing out all this free stuff when the store's open. What makes sense there? And it's when I realized that we were doing what I call government-centric problem solving. We weren't talking to the retailers. We really had no way to up until that point. And it forced us after Wilma to sit down and start talking to folks. And there was this tendency on the government side, we wanted a whole lot of information from the retailers. It turned out you only need to know three things. Are you open? Are you open with some limited capabilities? Are you closed? And we started struggling with this idea, well, how do we communicate with a bunch of different entities, a bunch of different retailers who were having to talk to mayors, counties, and the state, and then later on FEMA, and kind of standardize that. So we started out doing conference calls, trying to get to the Florida Retail Federation, the majority of the retailers on there. Then we found out gas stations had their own association, trying to figure out how to get them in there. And we were doing a better job, and it's when I learned that you cannot solve really complex response issues, particularly in logistics and disaster, unless the retail sector and the suppliers are at the table. But how do you do that and set that up is kind of difficult when you have everything from states doing it differently to FEMA wanting information to which stores brief who people, and you found that everybody wanted to do a separate system. And so when I got up to FEMA and started talking about the whole community, the idea that, look, FEMA's not in the business of dealing with each of these individual issues, but it helps us to know where you're at in your businesses, what's open, what's not closed, to help us prioritize where resources should be going. And early on, we were working with several of the companies, Target, Walmart, and others, in an ice storm, and in their reporting, we could actually make decisions about stuff that we had pre-staged to move it to other parts of the country that were about to be impacted, because we got fast reports from the retail sector that, yeah, there's ice, but we're up and running, we got power. Well, Jim comes with this, this idea with, why don't we build, instead of everybody building separate systems or having multiple ways of reporting the same information across multiple platforms, why don't we take the thing that science and technology at DHS had helped develop and is being used in different applications with XchangeCore, and build a single integrated system that allowed retailers to put their information online and then have multiple users be able to pull that into their system. Not everybody's got to be on WebEOC, or everybody's got to be using ArcGIS, or everybody's got to be on that system. It's like, why don't we just build a data collection platform that simplifies, rather than having to do some of the things we were trying to do at FEMA with data feeds from different organizations, it just have a single platform that everybody from the major chains could be using, all the way down to smaller, more regional players who in some cases are the only providers of logistics, food, water, things like that at the local level. And not to dismiss the relationships, but to really build a common use platform that anybody that wanted to get to this information could input into, and that the end users can be all over the place, from the locals to the states to the feds, but we're all seeing the same information. And the idea is, if we know your status, we can then better tailor where we need to go where you're not, and avoid competing where you've already got stores open, where you already have capabilities going. We can focus on the areas not, and a lot of times your status helps give us a faster impression of the impacts of the disaster before we even get official reporting. So it's very beneficial on the government side to know where you're at, what's open, what's not open, tailor our response to better serve and not compete with your efforts. And so when Jim brought this to me, I said, well, this is what we've been looking for. People have developed a lot of different systems, but the problem was we can't have a different system for every organization and then expect that to make sense at the Emergency Operations Center, nor should you have to be putting information in half a dozen different systems, because everybody's got different operating systems that they want you to feed. So that kind of, is, don't compete with the private sector. Ask a different question. What can we do to get you open? And give a better reporting tool so that we can better make determinations on where the gaps are going to be. Focus on those areas, not areas you're getting up and you're operating in, because there's just not enough bandwidth in a really large-scale disaster. Small disasters, yeah, we can bring in enough ice and water stuff to drop the temperature sometimes, but it's not scalable. The bigger the disaster, the more we have to realize that our dependence upon the private sector is absolute. If you guys are not up in retailing and we're looking at how to support getting more of your stores open, we're not able to fill the gap. And so this is for the government side, from the FEMA side of the house, just an acknowledgement that no matter what people think, the federal government's not big enough to step in and assume the role that retail does every day. And in a disaster, nothing changes. We can't do it day to day. We certainly aren't going to be able to do it in a disaster. We have to work as a partnership. And the key underlying foundation to that is a common information platform that gets the information to the right people as decision makers without having people do multiple systems or multiple data entries to get to that point. As we go into the 2017 hurricane season, I think hurricanes and earthquakes are the two biggest wide area impacts that drives the need for something like SABER, because it's pretty easy when you just have a tornado hits one city or one county. But when you have something like a Hurricane Matthew, and we had the dominoes of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, parts of Virginia, we had extensive and significant flooding inside of the state of North Carolina, lesser to South Carolina and Georgia. Trying to add all that up and get visibility is extremely difficult. And I think that's where, as we move towards an agreement of a common platform like SABER, using XchangeCore to move the data back out to the systems and really creating an almost agnostic approach to information providers. We'll provide the information feed so it's easy for you to input your information, but then the end users can ingest it in their systems. They don't have to, tailor themselves to just one or two products and maintain that flexibility. But particularly for hurricanes, this is a tool I think is going to almost radically change how we're getting information in and out. And quite honestly, it would help me answer a question that when President Obama was asking questions, nobody could tell him because there was no place to go find it. Is how many gas stations were open in New Jersey and New York, and which ones were closed who didn't have gas? There was no central point to do that. And again, this will only be as good as the participants using it, inputting that data in a timely manner, and the end users being able to take and ingest that data to make decisions with. But again, I want to come back to what I see as really the guided principles of the relationship with the public sector and the private sector is we got to work as a team. Disasters are too big to go it alone. The government can't do what you do every day, and there are going to be instances where you need government to do something to get you back up and running or support that. So the goal here is how do you build a team and using a data tool to better link that team, particularly in large-scale, wide area disasters, so that we're not competing, we're working as a team. Private sector is filling the gaps where required, but they're more focused on answering a different question. What can we do to get you open? And trying to get the system back to a point where the private sector is meeting the bulk of the demand signal in a disaster area so that government can focus on the recovery and immediate needs functions. We can't do that without you. We can't do it without the information. This, we think, is probably one of the optimal processes to use. And for those of you that are using it, I would continue to push this idea that rather than everybody developing their own different specialized applications, if we can agree to enhance SABER and adapt it to whatever the different issues are that are coming up, we move to one system. I think it'll make your life easier. It'll certainly make the life easier for the people in the EOCs. And ultimately, we do what my goal is to get communities back on their feet faster at the least amount of cost to the taxpayer and maximizing your opportunity to get your businesses back up and minimize your losses due to disruptions and lack of retailing. So with that, Jim, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Craig. As always, right on target. And I think the couple of the phrases that you use, the data is agnostic. So on the left-hand side here in the public sector, and the right-hand side in Government Operations Center, data doesn't care what you're using. And there shouldn't be anybody who isn't able to use the data in what they have. And that's exactly what we're going to go do now. We're going to take a good look at how SABER works. And the challenge that Craig laid out is really filling that information gap in the middle. You got hurricanes, you got information, it resides on the infrastructure side, whether it's retail, water, power, gas stations, and then over on the right-hand side are those government, and I use the word support organizations because, as Craig said, with the whole community, everybody is part of the support. And the big question is, how do I get what's on the left-hand side to authorized recipients of the operating status on the right-hand side? SABER, built on XchangeCore, powered by XchangeCore, is what we believe to be the answer. And I'll note, SABER is a nonprofit. It was started by the public sector or private sector. Combination of the state of Florida and Walgreens were the origin of the idea. Brian Lowe from Florida came to me and said, "Gee, you got this XchangeCore thing. Could it help with the private sector?" And I said, "Sure. What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, let's talk to Jim Williams of Walgreens, and the three of us really put together the concept and then began to exercise it. And that concept gets operationalized by moving data from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. But in order to do that, you've got to be flexible. So everybody says, gee, I'd love to have an automated connection from your outage management system or your business management system. And the company says, well, I don't do that now. It's going to cost me money. I may not use it for X number of period of time. No. And then people want the information, walk away, saying they couldn't provide this automated feed. If you can, great. That's just the first option. Second option I call the quick win. I was very surprised by how many major national retailers get a dump of information out of a big system into a spreadsheet, and that's what they use to manage the emergency. That's what they send up to the CEO who says, how are we doing out there in this particular problem? They send a spreadsheet. So the quick win became, let's use that spreadsheet, and I don't care what you put in that spreadsheet. Let's use it. SABER, let's use the technology through SABER to translate that into a national standard format that then we can make available to other people. The third format is commercial application SpotOnResponse. Has worked closely with SABER and with XchangeCore and has now built an application for status reporting, both for site as well as for personnel. So there's another option that's available. So just about any way you want to get information into SABER, there's a pathway for it. On the other side, you have an even wider range of ways to look at the information. Portals, websites. Lots of the business emergency operations centers have spent time and done a great job of building something that their members can use. SABER data can go into that. Incident management applications, WebEOC, eTeam, VOCI, a number of different applications. They're all sitting out there, and they all can use SABER information. Common operating pictures, ArcGIS Online gets information. Very simply, the tools are already built. For all three of those, it's simply a national standard format in a tool that allows you to move that information in. Mobile apps that do field verification, that anything from the front seat of a fire truck into a company tablet that are being used out there. And finally, just a plain old copy of Google Earth. Download it for free, and you can see SABER data. That's the big picture. Left to right flow, although you'll note two different places there, the incident management applications, the mobile apps on the right-hand side, the arrows go in two different directions, and actually ArcGIS Online, there's another arrow there, which says, gee, if I have something going on in WebEOC, an incident that might actually affect restoration of retail operations or whatever, I can now move that information from WebEOC back into SABER, and it gets shared to everyone else who might be affected by that particular problem. Same way with field applications, same way with ArcGIS Online. Effectively say, here's an incident occurring in this particular location. All of you who have retail around there, you ought to be aware of this happening. So it becomes a two-way flow of information as well. What we're going to do now is focus on the quick win, because it's the best way for you to understand the variety of information that can start out on the left and how it gets to the right. So let's start out. Indebted to San Jose Water Company, that is a active participant in SABER for this particular set of information that we're going to use. And it starts with a plain old Excel spreadsheet or a Google spreadsheet. And San Jose Water and any company can define what they want to see. I'm going to take a second there to describe it because it goes incredible extremes. Here's some very, very nice set of information. You'll tell me where the outage pipe is located, how big the main is, whether it's a horizontal or vertical pipe, whether it's cast iron or not. Great information. And if you're willing to share that as a company, wonderful. I have one retailer who, after watching the process for a couple of years and not wanting to participate, finally came to me and said, I now understand the value of it, but I still don't feel comfortable giving you lots of information. But as Craig said, all I really want to know is, are you open? Are you open with limited capabilities? Are you going to be closed? Really 3 different categories there. So this company said, what I'm now willing to do is send you a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet will have a latitude and longitude on there. If you get a spreadsheet from me, you can assume that it is my company. If there's a latitude and longitude on there, you can assume that we have a facility there. And if I bothered you sending it to you, you can assume that it's closed. But all I'm officially ever going to give you is a latitude and longitude. And you know what we said? Fantastic. It's way more than any government has ever gotten from this national organization before. So you can build as much or as little information as you want, which should give the providing organization total confidence that you're not giving away the farm. No secrets are exposed. Nobody can ever get in and look at your data. All those concerns that people have about data security, they simply don't exist with SABER because you're the only one who offers data and you're only giving what you want, and nobody can get in and touch your data. In this case, with San Jose Water, in the blue there are all the specific pieces of data that form a column in the spreadsheet that they decided to provide. But as I said, companies define what they share. So you can have lots of data fields, you can just have a few, or you can just put in the latitude and longitude and make the assumptions that that other national retailer did. When that happens, what we're going to do is trace those 11 leaks that you see up there on the top part, and we're going to focus on this single Stagecoach Road and State Park Road 2-inch cast iron pipe. And we're going to take that through multiple applications to show you exactly how the information gets shared and the value that is gained by sharing that information. So we start out, any operations center, using the quick win, take the spreadsheet that may have been dumped out of an outage management system, might have been manually entered, all depends on how you do it today, how the company does it today. They go to saberspace.org, click on member login, and there are the name of the companies on this list, and they do a secure authentication to get in so that we know that they are the right people providing that information. Second step is that information then gets uploaded and gets into XchangeCore. And XchangeCore does 2 things at that point. One, it has already authenticated that organization. It then takes that spreadsheet and transforms it into NEEM-compliant National Standard Data formats. NEEM is the National Information Exchange Model. This information gets put into the NEEM-compliant Incident Information format, and every connected application then can get a notification about what has changed and begin to bring that information into their own application. That information, once it sits inside XchangeCore, it looks like all this gobbledygook. This is the administrative console in XchangeCore, and the note up at the top is most critical. You never see this. Don't say I looked at XchangeCore, because you can't look at an XchangeCore unless you happen to be administrator. You can't look at XchangeCore because XchangeCore is only data. Over on the left-hand side, in this data format, in the administrative console, you see the 11 leaks. Right-hand side, all that squishy stuff with all the brackets and the B's, that's an XML format, which is a standard format for sharing information. This happens to be the NEEM standard for using that information. And here we see the Stagecoach Road and Parks and State Road 2-inch cast iron pipe. So now this is sitting inside of XchangeCore. It's been transformed from the spreadsheet sitting inside of XchangeCore, and now it comes out the other side, figuratively. It comes out the other side, and if a portal on a website is a connected application, they can grab the information. An incident management application can grab it. It can get posted up on a common operating picture in ArcGIS Online. It can become part of an integration with mobile apps. And, as I said before, free copy at Google Earth. You want to know about SABER? Doesn't cost you a penny to get involved with it. So we've gone from the unique format of the spreadsheet, common data format in the middle, and then it gets visualized in whatever application you're commonly using. So we're going to go through and drill down in a number of these different applications, starting out with the SpotOnResponse mobile app and web application. On the left-hand side, you see the little yellow pins there. Each one of them represent a dot on the map from the location that was provided by the San Jose Water spreadsheet. The yellow list that you see down at the bottom of that, and also the larger web page, show that text list of all of those water locations, and the blow up there coming out of clicking on that icon on the map gives you the listing of information, and the blow up shows that we're looking at that same Stagecoach Road, State Park Road, 2-inch cast iron pipe. Application number 1. ArcGIS Online, powerful, popular tool. You're going to see it again. 11 dotted leaks on the map here. They are little diamonds. The little pop-up shows that we've got one of those leaks popped up. The blow-up there shows my 2-inch cast iron pipe on Stagecoach Road. Same information, different application. Nobody has to look at anything that they are not familiar with. WebEOC, ever popular. List of all the leaks that are there, details of the leak that pops up in the list. As long as those things are active, they remain on WebEOC. When they are taken off of XchangeCore, they get closed on WebEOC, just like regular WebEOC incidents. GeoCollaborate, and this one I'm going to tell you, I just got this information at 10:30 last night. GeoCollaborate just last week did the integration with SABER as part of a project that they're doing with the All Hazards Consortium. And here we see that same information from water leaks on 2 different maps, one in the Bay Area, the other one more detailed in San Jose area. And then the blow up showing the detail of the leaks, address, pipe dimensions, and all the rest of it. And you don't even have to make it hard. You can go off, and there's a little link that you just plug into any browser, and you get a list of information. This happens to be Internet Explorer. Does a nice job of formatting the information, but here's my public water in San Jose, and there are 11 leaks in that list. The blow-up shows we got Stagecoach Road and our 2-inch cast iron pipe. And just happens Internet Explorer, if you look on the right-hand side of the circle, it starts to filter by categories. So as it tells us, we've got public water. There are those 11 there, but there are also some other incidents and infrastructure that's taking place and sitting on that SABER core at that point. So a simple way to look at it. And then I keep telling you about the free copy of Google Earth, exactly the same thing. 11 leaks in the list on the left-hand side, 11, what are these, little diamonds with a pop-up that shows public water in the city of San Jose, and then you click on any one of those pop-ups, you get the nice list, 2-inch cast iron pipe. The result then is authoritative status coming out of the private sector to verified organizations that are getting that information by agreement. And for those of you who have participated in these sessions before, SABER is not any part of written agreements. Our agreements are all technical. You say you want to see this, we're going to publish your name, and everybody on the left-hand side says, here's a consumer of your information, and they have been approved by the SABER group, which pretty much approves everybody who's any kind of a government organization. So it is that level of openness that we want in our agreements, not a closedness in the agreement. Take a moment there to pause, though. Say if anybody wants a completely private set of information exchange operating on the highest level security networks in the world, you can do that. XchangeCore has been certified to operate on DHS secure networks, currently operating on .mil networks at the highest levels of security there. So the tool set themselves can be as secure as you want it. SABER's role, though, is to share the information. So when you go onto the SABER site, read the agreement for providing information, the assumption is that you are going to give that information up to anybody on the right-hand side with no assumption that they're going to protect it in any way. So two different levels of security that are available in SABER or available in XchangeCore, SABER choosing to be the most open and sharing of the organizations. So my result is any format normalized into a standard format in SABER through XchangeCore and available to multiple different applications. And the underlying solution, as I just mentioned, XchangeCore, as Craig mentioned, it was originally developed by DHS Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology Directorate. It was then taken over, in a sense, as the major funding unit by the Department of Defense, Northern Command. And over a 2-year period, they gave a military twist to it, and there is now operating on the .mil networks, something that is called Keystone, which is identical to XchangeCore. And the two share information. As a matter of fact, we're in the Ardent Sentry exercise starting Saturday or Sunday, I think it is, this week. We're actually showing the .mil XchangeCore talking to the civilian side XchangeCore with information moving from the secure military network to the outside civilian world through the two different types of XchangeCore. XchangeCore is currently operated by a not-for-profit as an open source community and fully operational, as you are seeing right now. Word on the technical architecture for those of you who want to see that in a little bit more detail. XchangeCore in the center, and in SABER, 3 different ways that we've talked about to get in there. Beginning at the top, which is actually our option 2, the quick start spreadsheet file that gets in there. You can go through the SABER space, but you can also put this access and uploading into your own portal. So nobody actually has to go to SaberSpace website. That's the common way for people to do it. But a couple now are saying, okay, I want to keep people inside of mine, State of Maryland Business Emergency Operations Center for one. Now you can go right into their center, click, and be able to upload Maryland business information. That goes into the private portal from that file. There's a web service adapter that connects into XchangeCore. Second one, live data stream. That says that I have a application, and you see a number of them there, and the two-way flow in particular ones that we've talked about earlier. They have a connector that is a web service connector that contains a discussion, a continual exchange back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth, so that there's total synchronization between what's happening on that live system on the left-hand side and XchangeCore in the middle. And finally, there are standard formats that databases can output. GeoRSS, GeoJSON, using those geospatial standard formats, there's a web service utility that brings that information into XchangeCore. That is the live direct feed that we talked about earlier. And right now there's only one that's doing that one, and that's Walmart. Walmart, we're monitoring them all the time. If a pipe breaks in Fargo, North Dakota, and that Walmart goes into a limited operation for some reason or opens late, you can find that out on SABER. Not a big emergency, but a good example that this is available and being used all the time. Then we get to connecting. Over here, this optional username and password. If you want a level of security, we can create so that people can only come in and see that information when authenticated by XchangeCore and given permission by somebody on the left-hand side. SABER has chosen to be open, though. Information comes in from the left as part of the SABER organization. XchangeCore can make it secure. The SABER use of XchangeCore is open. Web service adapter goes out to this crisis management system, another out to the Google Earth, GRSS and KML, out to the common operating pictures. Easy. Literally, that bottom step there, in moving that into a Google Earth or into an ArcGIS Online, I can get on the phone with you, and by it's 44 minutes after the hour right now, by 55 minutes after the hour, we'll have your data into a Google Earth or an ArcGIS Online. And it's used, it's experienced, it's real. Taking a look at a couple of these, this was the Hurricane Sandy. It was the first thing we did was not, XchangeCore came into place after Hurricane Sandy, but we used the Hurricane Sandy data with Walgreens and Target and a couple of others to test out the concept and be able to move it into the number of different applications here in the WebVOC and Esri Flex Viewer and Google Earth and others. And we started getting operational the March 2015, I think it was, the Snowmageddon. Closures all through the East Coast, and here you see again SABER in operation in its earlier days, and you note up here we've got a Walgreens submitted something at 4 a.m. on February 13th, and that's available through XchangeCore, and here shown on, which one is that? That's a ArcGIS Online. Keeping it rolling here, Hurricane Arthur, live event, moving information through. This looks like it's mostly Walgreens information now. And just an example of the variety of different ways you look at it. Lots of text listings in a WebVOC kind of tool. You got cute icons on a couple of the others. You saw earlier, maybe the icons are only diamonds. How the end user application looks at the information is entirely up to them. Here's Capstone 15, the West Coast major Southern California earthquake. And through XchangeCore out to the SABER clients, we've got an ArcGIS Online up there. You've got the listing out that we talked about and just coming out in a Internet Explorer. Note the interaction. Here's where some information comes back to support the SABER information. Down in the bottom right-hand corner, a chemical plume that the California Department of Public Health created. And thus you can see its impact on, I don't remember which one it is, but some business organization. So all of the ability to move the information in multiple ways and to lay additional value onto that by providing information from other sources that may help stores and other SABER providers learn more about the situation and be able to deliver faster response support for their reopening. Hurricane Matthew, you heard Craig mention that. Here, the Florida Common Operating Picture information, the other more familiar ones you have. Actually, we haven't taken a look at the SABER status map in the bottom left-hand corner. That's a way to look at it if you don't bring information into your own application. In the center there on that SpotOnResponse, you're seeing National Weather Service hurricane information and their effect on, what is that? Looks like a Walmart, yeah, a Walmart logo and a Walgreens logo and some Target guys down there as well. And also active participation in the National Business Emergency Operations Center, dashboard, providing links out to SABER information as well. Having shown a lot of hurricanes, because this is the Hurricane Initiative, but want to move towards the conclusion of this by reinforcing that SABER is nationwide and all hazards. Left-hand image there is the Virtual Business Emergency Operations Center, Margon National Labs, in the Midwest earthquake exercise for the New Madrid Fault. The right-hand side was the, I forget which national level exercise, but you see SABER and all the different organizations there, Macy's and Target and Walgreens and Walmart, Boyd Gaming and others, all of them showing a national set of national impact here shown on ArcGIS Online. So, to pull this together, a value proposition. The value of SABER to the private sector begins with that quick start. Let's build some trust. Provide that spreadsheet. SABER builds the template for you, gives you a place to access it on saberspace.com, and we just click on your company name, secure login, upload the data, done. If you have an automated output, that's great. But starting with a simple spreadsheet gets you convenience, gets you providing authoritative data, and you know that those on the other side are always being notified when that data is new, and as a result, they are continually updated and you're certain that nobody's looking at old information. On the government side, the value proposition is one place to go. Many, many pieces of information, whether you're using a Virtual Business Emergency Operations Center or any of the common operating pictures or your own website or incident management, that company or critical infrastructure disruption information is available through XchangeCore and the SABER organization. One place to go, saves you time, eliminates the need to go out and call anybody. You know you're getting authoritative information, synchronized and always available. Let me conclude with just a moment on David Griffith, who really was inspirational in starting the Hurricane Initiative, and this now being our third year for the Hurricane Initiative, the program manager for FEMA's National Hurricane Group, and both Craig and I knew Dave since his days in the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council in the mid-1980s, and just a way for all of us to remember somebody who was both a pioneer in hurricane planning, and for the decade or so that he worked for me in a technology application company, the Emergency Information System, was a leader in moving us into the direction through innovation in technologies. So let me just conclude with a call to action. First, enroll in SABER. Doesn't take more than a minute. Saberspace.org, and you can say, I want to provide information, I want to consume information. You'll then get a guide to using the SABER data, and if you give that to your technical staff, I guarantee that they'll say, oh yeah, sure, we can do that. Phone numbers in there, we can guide them through the process. Also want you to be able to communicate about SABER, so we've got a little one-pager that's on saberspace.org that says 3 easy lessons on how to use SABER. Summary of that value proposition that I just gave you, and the instructions on how to get started. Lastly, if you have an exercise, let's try it out together. Let us know. We can help support an exercise. As I mentioned, we're involved in Ardent Century next week, and starting in the middle of the week in the Gotham Shield exercise, there the information coming from SABER will be going to the National Business Emergency Operations Center for their 3 or 4 days of participation, and have encouraged our existing SABER members to work with us. You can either be an active participant or a passive participant. By an active participant, you take care of simulating outage information and closures in the New York area where this incident is taking place. And if you want to be passive, SABER sets up a little simulation cell, and we can simulate closures of organizations. So you don't even have to get involved except for sharing with us the location of the information or the location of your facilities so that we can open and close them following the scenario. So with that, let me invite any of you to contact us directly. Encourage you all to either be a consumer or a provider or both to SABER. Thank Craig very, very much for his introduction and his willingness to chair this year's Hurricane Information Initiative through SABER. And thank you all for joining us. And a good crowd today, and look forward to getting you all back next month when we do this again on a new topic. And just say thank you. Have an excellent month. Enjoy the spring. Bye, everybody.